Hi, my name is Chris, and I run a shop in Cedar Rapids called Razzle Dazzle Music Movies. That shop sells physical media, CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, vinyl records, VHS tapes, and cassettes. The shop opened December 1st, and as of this past week, it has crossed the 100-day mark, which is nice. It's a nice round number, and I wanted to take this milestone as an opportunity to reintroduce myself. Some have been here the whole time, who have followed along through the entire build out of the store, and some just might find out about the store because of this video. Who knows? But either way, instead of rehashing a lot of that old stuff, I'll just point you in the right direction. For the 30 days leading up to the shop's opening, I posted video updates recapping the day's progress. Some of it's a little cringe in hindsight, but overall it's kind of cool because it shows how things went from this to this. But for this video, I just want to talk about my experience about what it's been like to open the shop and what the first 100 days in business have taught me. Right out of the gate, before getting ahead of myself though, my main fear here is that this comes across as like celebratory or something like that, which I really don't want. I want to preface this entire video by framing it with the best example I have for this idea, which is Bobby Moynihan character from Saturday Night Live that shouts, "I'm going to live forever," but then immediately dies before finishing the word forever. I know I'm not going to live forever here. My goal, though, is probably a little unrealistic in terms of longevity, but we'll see what happens. And that actually brings me to the first point of the video. I sent out some requests for questions on social media and asked a few friends what they might like to know about the experience in the shop after its first couple months. And one question read, "Would love to know if this seems like a long-term option and if we can expect Razzle Dazzle to be dazzling us for years to come." Well, I'm going to get to that, but to better explain one answer in this video, I'm going to have to speak to a few things at the same time. So here are some other questions that might help. One is, where did you find or do you find the majority of your inventory to sell? And another, what does the back room look like and how many movies are kept back there? So let's check it out. I was very fortunate to have been given the opportunity to rent the space the shop's in, because my first contract at the mall was signed to take over a basement unit that used to be a smash room. It was pretty small, relatively speaking, and instead, what I'm in used to be a Foot Locker. Thus, the metal racks that line the shop, which were originally used for shoes and clothes. But the selling point wasn't necessarily just the nice big storefront. It was the back room. My plan has never been to just run a brick and mortar. In fact, the retail shop came several years after starting the business online. So in a stroke of luck to fuel the online business, sometime last year I secured a large inventory source, which to this point has provided me with more than enough CDs and DVDs to keep me going. Right now, I'm in the process of working with my buddy Sean to consolidate 3 large storage lockers of inventory into the back room. To really just help streamline things, utilizing both the racking system that's back there that was left in place by Foot Locker and the large staging bay behind it, which will hold a lot more inventory very shortly. So maybe I'll share that when it all comes to fruition. But if things work out, that should help make both the online and the retail processes significantly more efficient. And with any luck, you'll see Sean around the store a little bit more. But will the old Razzle Dazzle be dazzling for years to come? That entirely relies not just on whether people remain into the idea of owning their own music and movies, which I'm very aware is kind of trending right now, but more importantly, on inventory availability. To move the kind of product that's required to keep the ship afloat while also offering what I feel are pretty competitive prices, that requires more than just hoping that people in the neighborhood will bring some stuff into seller trade. I love when people do. I really like that experience, but it takes more than that. And I'm really trying to establish this as something that has some longevity to it. So in terms of that inventory, though, there was another question that kind of speaks to what is selling. The question was, how many items have sold? I'm going to approach it in a little bit different way and focus more on what's sold rather than how much of it. And this is simply counting the number of items sold, not any dollar figures. But straight up, almost 2/3 of the items that have sold are lumped in the movie side of things. To break things down a little bit more, we can see that beyond the music and movie separation, nearly 90% of the items sold in the shop would be considered disc media. DVDs, Blu-rays, 4Ks, CDs, that kind of stuff. Now, a surprising aspect to me when it comes to this, I was not anticipating when the shop opened that almost 1 out of every 10 items that sells would be a tape of some type, be it VHS, cassette, one of those, which kind of speaks to the most asked question that I received. And I'll relay a few of those variations, like what surprised you the most about opening the store? Out of all the expectations you had, if any, what has been the most positive, unexpected thing or things that has happened? And then lastly, did you have certain expectations going into it that were completely changed once you got it up and running? Like, did you go into it thinking things would go one way, but they went the complete opposite? So I know that things can change quickly here. Things can happen that are both in and out of my control that could sour this idea really fast. And today's vibe isn't necessarily like a predictor of future outcomes. But my biggest surprise is that it's working. What surprised me the most is just how many people are into this idea right now. And I think the most unexpected thing that I could not have predicted was the speed with which it's changed once the store got opened. I sincerely thought it would take about 6 months to get my feet wet. If you visited the shop, as you've probably seen, I have signage all around the mall. But beyond that, my goal really wasn't to rev up awareness right away. When I tell you that I'm figuring this all out as I go, I am not joking. My approach to this was never really that intricate in terms of planning and strategizing. It was more along the lines of like, oh, if that didn't work, I'm going to stop doing it. And if it does work, let's go with it. So speaking of going with it, one of the homies who responded to my questions took my question and ran with it. So thank you again to Cowboy Jen, who has been a tremendously positive presence for no other reason than they are a very nice person. But here is what Jen sent me. So let's go through this really rapid fire, or as quickly as possible here. Jen asks, do you have a movie that you keep multiple copies of but don't sell? I'm trying to learn how to turn inventory a little bit more effectively, so I don't have a ton of like backlog of movies anymore. But unbeknownst to me, when I started alphabetizing and categorizing all the movies I had been hoarding in advance of opening the shop, I had like a dozen copies of 30 Days of Night. While horror is a popular genre, I will tell you, I have not sold a dozen copies of them. So I learned some kind of lesson there. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but still a good movie. I like it. Next, do you base your suggestions to people when they ask what movie do you recommend on their vibe or your favorites? Well, it depends on what the question is and if I know that person. I'll give you an example. There was a young dude who came in the shop recently named Moses. I like Moses. He's a cool guy. He'd been in the shop a few times before, but this time he came in with a list. He's gotten a new job, and the people at his work loaded him up with a list of movies he needed to watch. Fortunately, I had a lot of them, which was great because there had been a running joke in my mind that when he would come in, whether it was just him or him and his mom, I would have like 1 out of every 4 that they asked for, which made me feel a little bit inferior, like I was not providing good service to him. So I was stoked when I was able to meet the need that night. But as he was checking out, he asked if I had any recommendations, and I took a beat. I said, why don't you come back once you've watched these and let me know what you like? Then I can figure out what might be a good fit. The range was all over the place. It was comedy to westerns to action. And I believe Moses is 19, so he's just getting his feet wet with a lot of this stuff, which is awesome. But I didn't really want to shoehorn my own personal taste into that equation. Like, I wanted to find something he was into based off of what he's into, if that makes sense. So I think the answer is like a combination of the two. I want to base my recommendation on what someone is into, but also something that I like, kind of find a happy medium between the two. I can't make a recommendation if I don't think a thing is good. But also, I'm not going to recommend it simply because I think it's good. Does that make sense? Next. Is there an age variety that visits the shop? And does that age range surprise you? Not to sound cocky, but I fully expected the age range to be all over the place. There is no average customer in the shop, and a part of me really likes that. My intention is for the spot to be a welcoming atmosphere, and I think to this point it's worked out. Next, what's the one or few pieces of trivia / movie facts that you can't help but share? I am not great with this, but one that comes up from time to time is that one of the leads in Office Space, which is a movie I really like, is Ron Livingston, who is from Marion. I first heard this on his interview on Mark Maron's podcast, and while there are several other big names from the area, that's one that kind of sits with me. because I love that movie so much. Next, do Gen X movies like Breakfast Club, etc. get purchased by younger generations? The answer is some, but I'd say it's probably more like 90s vibes right now. But I'm 42 and my experience has been that people around my age have more of that nostalgic sense for Gen X stuff than people younger. But think of it this way. I was growing out of my teenage years in the late 90s. So that previous generation was still fairly within reach to someone in, like, say, 1999. By comparison, someone of that same age today would be looking back on music and movies made in the late 2000s with the same sort of distance, time-wise, at least. So something like The Breakfast Club now is roughly as far away from today, time-wise, as something released in the mid-1940s was for people who were around when The Breakfast Club came out. That is a trip and a whole other conversation for another day. Next, what movies do you need to find more of because they will sell? Studio Ghibli. That's because I try to keep things fair in terms of pricing though. So typically everything that I've put out on the floor, whether it's Kiki or Totoro, they sell like that same day. So I can't keep them on the shelves. And honestly, that is one of the things that I think is a big downside of the store. When I get asked from people who are coming in fresh, whether I have something, the answer is typically rarely a yes. My answer is usually I had it, but now it's gone, which is great. I mean, the goal of this store is to sell stuff, right? But I also recognize that like the metal CDs right now, they are pretty much trash because they have been picked through for 3 months and I can't keep on top of it. So that brings me to the final point of the video, which is to ask, what would you like to know about the process so far? And what would you suggest to make the store better? If you have been in the shop, I'm really curious to know about how your experience could have been improved. Or if there's something that would help benefit like the social media side of things or fill in the blanks. Like I said this whole video, I'm genuinely doing my best to figure all this out as I go. But I'm also trying to recognize when I can do better and change. So if there's something that would nudge this in the right direction, I am all ears. And with that, I appreciate all of the support in making the first 100 days what I consider a huge success. And I look forward to seeing you in the shop sometime soon. Thank you.